Alright, I was wrong. Last week on RPG Horror Stories, I talked about It's What My Character Would Do, and I framed it as never a good argument. And I think that I kind of missed the point. It's What My Character Would Do isn't an argument. It's an explanation. It's part of an argument, which means that it's not always a bad thing, and I definitely was wrong in that sense. And also kind of broke the whole point of role-playing, because when you're making decisions in character, of course you're going to follow what your character will do. But, yeah, It's What My Character Would Do is an interesting subject, and its usage when playing D&D is fascinating, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about where the line is drawn. When are you just staying in character, and when are you being toxic in your group? When is the line good, and when is the line bad? Today, we're going to untangle that whole mess. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so in case you're out of the loop, It's What My Character Would Do is a classic phrase in RPG horror stories and tabletop culture in general, role-playing culture in general, if we're being honest. It is usually framed as a bad thing in RPG horror stories. You know the type, the murder hobo rogue who kills a bunch of civilians, ruins the game, and then says it's what my character would do. Obviously, that is bad. If your character is not good for the group, then that's your fault. It doesn't matter if it's what they would do, you made that character. So if you create an edgy rogue who's going to kill the entire party, or an edgy rogue who's going to steal everything, or an edgy warlock who's going to kill all the guards and ruin the party's chances at taking the main quest, well, that's not good. You made those characters. Why didn't you make something different if you wanted to fit in with the party? That is the flaw with It's What My Character Would Do as an argument when used to defend one's actions in the game. Because it doesn't matter. The group isn't having fun. Nobody's having a good time here. That is more important than it's what your character would do. Staying in character never trumps having fun at the table. If you're ruining the experience for other players or the DM, then that is not good. It's what your character would do doesn't matter, because what matters is having a good time. And if the only person having a good time is you, well, then that is a problem. But I think most people understand that. However, something I didn't understand was that It's What My Character Would Do is not just used in that situation. It's also used as an explanation for your actions. And I only needed to look at my own game. In my game, our party argues sometimes. The characters disagree because, all of them are very, very different people. We have a paladin who's served faithfully in the church for years, and we have a pirate who's a thief and a criminal. They don't get along. In fact, the decisions that both players make vastly disagree with each other. They argue, they disagree, it's part of their characters, it's what they would do, and it's great. Obviously, both players understand that it's not a real-life disagreement. They're not disagreeing. It's not Kyla and Caden disagreeing, it's Freya and Flint disagreeing. That's different. We all understand that, and because it's what their character would do, we create interesting roleplay interactions, interesting stories. It makes the game better. It's an explanation and a method to create fun roleplay interactions, and it's a reason why it shouldn't be tossed out of your vocabulary entirely. You need to do what your character would do sometimes. When you create a character with an interesting backstory, and even a dynamic way to interact with the rest of the group, if you make a character with that in mind, then of course you need to do what your character would do. Otherwise, you're kind of missing out on a lot of the fun of D&D, playing in character and role-playing these people. Now, like I said earlier, you can't make a character that's going to create a toxic dynamic, or a character that's going to ruin the fun for the rest of the party, but as long as you don't do that, don't go out of your way to be a dick, then you can have a really good time staying in character and doing what your character would do. But what about a situation that's more gray? Obviously, creating a cool interaction is a good thing, and obviously killing tons of guards and ruining the fun for the rest of the party is a bad thing. Those are obvious. But what about something a bit more gray? What about something like your character has a long interaction, a cool roleplay moment with one of the NPCs. You have a great time doing it, and most of the party enjoy that. But one player feels like it was a bit spotlight hoggy and pushed them out of the game. They're nervous and didn't know how to step in, and they felt like this long interaction wasn't really helping. It kind of ruined the session for them. Well, that's a bit more gray. You enjoyed doing the roleplay, other players enjoyed watching it, but this one player didn't. And for a good reason. They felt like they were pushed out. That shouldn't be ignored. And I know, somebody is thinking, oh, well, that's just one person. Just dismiss it. Well, That is a terrible, terrible way to think. Unless they're asking for something unreasonable, then you shouldn't dismiss any concern brought up at the table. You're all playing this game together. If one person has a concern, that should be the concern of everybody in the group. If another player at the table brings up some kind of concern, like they feel like they're getting pushed out of roleplay interactions, they feel like their character isn't getting used very often, they feel like no one wants to talk to their character, etc, etc, etc. If someone brings up a concern like that, it's probably not a good idea to just say it's what my character would do. It can be part of the explanation, but if you say it's what my character would do on its own when someone brings up a concern, then that is a dismissal. You're just dismissing it. Oh, well, I don't talk to you much because my character wouldn't do it. That doesn't really matter, does it? Like I said, staying in character is not as important as making sure other people are having fun. And in these scenarios where somebody brings up a concern, it's probably not a good idea to just say it's what my character would do. Now, this is also where I made a mistake, because last week I said in RPG Horror Story that what you should do is use an out-of-game explanation, but that doesn't really work either, because if you just say, oh, well, I was just trying to create a cool roleplay interaction, that's also a dismissal. Just like it's what my character would do could be used as a dismissal. The key that I didn't understand was, well, understanding. Sure, you can say an explanation. You can say whatever explanation you feel comfortable with. Your explanation could be, I felt like that's what my character would do in that situation. Or your explanation could be, I just felt like I was creating a cool roleplay interaction with the DM. But those can't be it. But you follow that up by saying, however, I understand what you're saying, let's talk about this. Understanding is the main thing. It's what my character would do could be a really crappy dismissal, like we said earlier. But it could also be part of the explanation, because yeah, that's the truth. Sometimes you just do what your character would do. Sometimes you're just playing the game and you don't realize when you might be spoiling the fun for someone else. You're playing this game for a long period of time. People are going to make mistakes. I have made mistakes. I've chosen and made decisions in character that I didn't think were bad until a player approached me and we talked about it. The key was understanding, not changing the argument to out-of-game explanations or changing the argument to not say it's what my character would do, because that doesn't really matter. What matters is understanding what somebody else is saying. What matters is empathizing with their problem and working together to make the game more fun for everybody. Whether you use in-game explanations about your character or out-of-game explanations about your playstyle, it doesn't matter. What matters is fixing the problem, working together to make the game more fun. So that's what I missed. It's what my character would do is not a wholly bad thing. It is a perfectly reasonable way to make decisions in-game. But when problems arise, don't just use it as a dismissal. Work together with other players to make sure everyone is having a good time at your D&D table, or whatever tabletop role-playing game you're playing. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Tabletop Tavern Tips, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. It's what my character would do to let me know you made it to the end of the video. And that's like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.